was having an interesting conversation with a friend this morning about abundance, and I think that's where we'll start, and then we'll move into talking about insecurities. But I was talking to this friend this morning, and something I think that doesn't get talked about enough or can get misinterpreted a little bit when we're thinking about attracting abundance into our life is that one, spiritual people will tell you, oh, you're manifesting hardship in your life to because you're focusing on lack, which I don't actually believe to be true. You're manifesting hardship in your life to grow and become a better version of yourself, and that might be through financial struggle. Doesn't mean that your vibration's low or that you're focusing on lack. It just means that the universe needs you to become more strong, powerful, settled in yourself, and calm in a storm, right? That might be brought through a financial lens. And so it doesn't mean that we're like doing anything wrong just because like we're somehow manifesting financial struggle. The universe looks at experiences as not like good or bad. The universe gives you experiences, and based on who the universe desires you to become, and every experience we have is serving our highest good. But we get to choose, okay, am I going to allow this experience to serve my highest good and use this pain as my greatest fuel to become better, or am I going to shut down and contract? And so when we're going through hardship, like let's say we're going through financial hardship, it isn't so much that my beliefs and lack are all of a sudden causing me to struggle, but it's the universe needs you to grow, and it's giving you this hardship so you can grow. You don't need to beat yourself up and say, I have negative beliefs. But the caveat to that is, while my actions are always going to be the greatest solution to pretty much any problem in my life, right? How I'm viewing problems does make an impact. And that's when our beliefs play a little bit more of a factor. And I said this to my friend, and while I don't think necessarily that it's our fault for manifesting hardship or struggle, and we have a planet right now where there's a lot of ways to manifest struggle. And so we don't need to beat ourselves up for why things happened, is what I'm essentially trying to say. But it's also at looking at, okay, now that I'm in this struggle, am I constantly focusing on what I don't have, or am I focusing on what I do have? And that is a choice. And you look at, like, if let's say abundance is value, right? Right. Oftentimes, the greatest motivators to make a change is saying, I'm worthy to have more than I have in this moment, and I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that outcome happens, right? That's how a conscious spiritual person like embodies the worth of the feminine, which is intention. So the divine feminine is always about intention. So if you have worth and value, you're going to go, this hardship I'm experiencing is something I am worthy of having more than what I have in this moment. And then the divine masculine says, okay, how committed, how consistent, and how creative do I need to become in order to find a solution to this problem, in order to find a solution to the negative experience I'm having in my life. And part of that experience will be slightly soothed by what we're focusing, and part of that experience probably will, or hardship we're experiencing, will be slightly soothed by the action steps we take. And for me, like I finally got a job, and I talked about this a little bit in my last video, but um, I finally landed a full-time job. It's something I'm interested in. It's working with addicts. And when I was looking at why I struggled getting a job so much, I realized that there is a part of me that didn't care about a lot of the jobs I was applying for, and was consistent and committed, but wasn't really being creative enough and taking extra steps I would need to take to actually put my resume, which is a little bit on the weaker side, above other people. And so recognizing that, like, it took, like I worked a part-time job for 5 months, then I was unemployed for a couple months because I tore my shoulder working at Stretch Lab. Then I worked a part-time job for a junkyard for like 5 months, was unemployed after that for like a month or two, and then worked as a substitute teacher for a couple months, and then was unemployed from June to October, finally got a job. And when I was thinking about why did I struggle so much searching for a job, I realized it was because I was saying in my head, like, it was worse at the beginning of when I started applying for jobs, and it got softer and softer as I went through this process, which I kind of think is an alchemical process of like showing me how I was still identified with victimhoodness and powerlessness. Of when I first was applying for jobs, I was going, I don't care, right? I don't care about these jobs, and so I'm just going to rifle out a bunch of resumes and do nothing extra other than the bare minimum, right? And I wouldn't hear anything. And so the when we're feeling like a thing of I don't care, the question is, can I be a little bit more mindful about the jobs I'm applying for and try and find some jobs that I would actually care about, rather than just going on Indeed, applying to a bunch of random jobs and thinking I don't give a shit about any of these jobs, right? Because then we're not going to be motivated to continue in our job process. If we can find something that would actually be really interesting to us, like for me, I'm working with addicts and I'm super into healing, and that's right up my alley, the job that I finally did land. Um, uh, we will start to care more about our application process, and will be willing to take extra steps that will actually help us get interviews and get further along in actually getting a job we want. And sometimes we do need to be a little desperate, and sometimes we might need to get something quick just to provide us financial security, and that's okay too. But recognizing, if I'm in that perspective, once I get the security, right, then it's time to become, okay, what would actually be a job that I cared about? And can I take the same desperation I was feeling to get a job, and can I take that same motivation to now find a job that I actually care about a whole lot? And maybe I take a couple of weeks off before doing that, or even a month or two off, but eventually moving in, okay, what would actually light me up and excite me, rather than something that's just a paycheck, because that's really important. Because you're important and you deserve to live a life that is adding value to you, rather than just go moving paycheck to paycheck and you feel like your life is meaningless. And and also recognizing, when we're creating things that we value, it's actually adding greater value and worth to our own worth. And it's actually helping heal some of our unworthiness. And it's why people who are in high roles in companies can sometimes show up as very confident, or feel like they embody an energy that is maybe sometimes a little self-absorbed, but also sometimes we go, damn, I wish I was more like that. Like, they embody a real masculine man energy that feels like it's tickling the part of myself that doesn't feel like I'm like that at all. And in truth, you're not embodying that, because you haven't started to find your own value by having jobs that add value to your life. And some of those people in those roles might be in jobs where they're like CEOs and they're making a lot of money, and they still don't feel like they have a lot of value, but they're just good at hiding it too. So that might be also part of it. But and so bring the talk back, thinking about when, okay, moving beyond I don't care, and we're being committed and consistent to applying a job, but we're having a hard time getting interviews. The thirds, and this could be applied to any problem in our life, commitment, consistent, and creativity is what will solve literally anything in your life. And for me, what I realized with the job hunt is, while I started to wear out the part of me that said I don't care, and was starting to care more, the next thing that I was struggling with was I wasn't taking any extra steps rather other than sending out my resume and cover letter. And what I realized is when I became a little bit more creative and a little bit more committed to I have to get a job, I need to get a job. I've struggled too much. Is when I became a little bit more committed and a little bit more creative, I would like start to drop off my resume to to the business, or I'd send an email to the hiring manager being like, "Hey, I would really love to come in and interview. I think I have these skill sets that would really suit this job well." And when I started doing that more, I started getting way more interviews, and I realized the reason why I hadn't taken that step sooner is because I felt powerless to the job hunt, and I was identified to I'm powerless in solving this problem rather than if I just try harder I'll find the solution. And sometimes we can try everything and there never seems to be a solution that comes. And it's because the universe is trying to have the thing we're trying to solve fall apart so it actually can redirect us to something that's more fulfilling or meets us deeper. And so that's if we feel like we're giving literally everything we have and we're being committed, consistent, and creative, and it's still not working, and we've been doing that for months after months. That's a great sign of this isn't meant to work. and and so recognizing when we're the hardship we're going to is usually working to try and wear out of us some level of powerlessness or victimhood, and we won't find a solution to the problem we're in a lot of the times till we do the exact opposite of what the powerless and victimhood is telling us to do, which it would usually tell you to stop trying and give up, or just continue with the same amount of effort you've been trying. And your powerful version of yourself would say, try harder, get more creative, get more consistent, stay committed with it, and don't give up. And so that's part of it. I also think part of abundance and part of working through problems in our life is what are we choosing to focus on, because like attracts like. And when I'm working to when I'm focusing on the things that I have that are abundant, or when I'm focusing on the valuable, how valuable and amazing I am, or how valuable these relationships I have in my life are, or when I'm focusing on maybe I don't have an abundance of money, but I have an abundance of time. And a lot of people would tell you, and I think I'd be one of these people, that time is actually so much more worth more than money. Right. If you have a bunch of money but are about or don't have a lot of time left on this planet, you would trade all that money in that a heartbeat to have more time if you truly valued being alive. And recognizing that when we can prioritize looking at the ways I am abundant, looking at the ways that I have a lot rather than looking at all the things I don't have, we're actually starting to harmonize ourselves more with value. And we're actually starting to you'll start to feel better about yourself and about your life, which will lead you to becoming a different version in your life that is more confident and believes in yourself more and has an easier time being committed, creative, and consistent. And so that's the whole reason of why people say focus on what grows in your life, because if you focus on, or they'll say focus on what you want to grow in your life, because if you focus on it, you actually become a different version of yourself that then can step into more the version of yourself you need to be in order to find solutions in your life. And so while just focusing on just being grateful for what we have and focusing on the ways we might be abundant and have, and why our life has value and why we have value, is a beautiful practice, right? And it will change you. It's not the only thing. You need to balance out the masculine and the feminine, and you need to take, okay, I'm really good at seeing my worth and value, and I'm really good at looking and being grateful for what I do have, but I might still be silently aligned in victimhoodness and powerlessness if I'm not trying hard, if I'm not continuing to be more committed, more consistent, and more creative in whatever I'm trying to find solutions for in my life. And I thought that was a really important point to hit, because it actually takes both to be an embodied human. It takes I focus on gratitude. I focus on the ways I'm abundant, and like attracts like, and that will help softly, like maybe it's a little breeze above the stream of abundance I'm trying to bring to me, and it brings that stream a little quicker to me. But then it's also, right, I'm never going to get to the stream of abundance if I'm not working to walk across the meadow towards the stream, and you need to do both. And this kind of transitions into, I want to talk about shame, guilt, and unworthiness, because what you recognize about shame, guilt, and unworthiness is the reasons that we feel insecure and the reasons we get triggered. We only get triggered when we're protecting insecurities, and our insecurities are built off of negative beliefs we believe about ourselves, and shame, guilt, and unworthiness. And if we can start to face our pain, we start to feel way more secure in our body, way more secure in our relationships. We get triggered hell of a lot less. And we actually start to form deep, loving relationships, and we actually start to have a lot more peace and harmony in our life when we can face our darkness. And what you recognize is my negative beliefs are getting triggered because the universe is saying, hey, this thing you feel insecure about that just got triggered, we're trying to make you aware of it so you can align yourself more with the security and wholeness that the universe is constantly cheering you on to embody. And sometimes we are given painful experiences, but those painful experiences in the eyes of the universe are neutral. And they're neutral because the universe is saying this experience might really hurt now, but they're going to have the most rocket fuel level of growth and become the most great version of themselves because of this experience, if they're willing to face their pain around it. And recognizing that we only find harmony when we are willing to face the one that is harmed. And you only feel insecure when you are hiding from the deeper negative beliefs you hold about yourself, or when you're hiding from your shame, guilt, and unworthiness. And if we want to move into a secure attachment style and out of an anxious or avoidant attachment style and truly welcome in deep, meaningful relationships in our life, we have to learn to start to become, okay, if I feel insecure about something, what is the negative belief I secretly believe about myself that is fueling this insecurity? Or, oh, I just got triggered, right? What is the shame? Why am I what kind of pain am I hiding from by reacting rather than going, wow, that pulled at something and I see it. Right? We only can be reactive when there are aspects of ourselves we don't want to face. And for me, like, I get triggered. I'm not going to go up here and be like, I'm perfect, I'm fully healed, I found wholeness. All bow down to me. That no, I am still on the healing journey. I still feel shame, I still feel guilt, I still feel unworthy at times, right? I just talked about how I had super hard time getting a job. One, because I felt it was aligned with powerlessness and victimhood, and two, because I was not being creative or committed enough to making sure I got a job. And so recognizing that we're all healing, and even someone that puts on a really good mask of confidence still has wounds that they probably wouldn't want to tell you about. But in truth, right, your vulnerability is your greatest strength, and you truly see who people are when you can be vulnerable with them, and you truly know what you're buying into, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a partnership, romantic partnership, when you are willing to be vulnerable with them. And oftentimes when you are willing to be vulnerable with someone, typically they match it. And if they don't match it, that's something to maybe be aware of a little. But recognizing that doesn't mean I have to go and share all my darkest secrets on the first date, or with this friend I just met, right? That's its own pattern of trying to get someone to love us by just pouring our heart out in front of them without making sure, okay, could they actually handle vulnerability? And the best way to know is to take things slow. And even if we're interested in dating someone, taking things really slow of, okay, let's just get to know each other as friends, and let's just start to connect from a place of slowly pulling slowly opening the flower, or slowly like slowly starting to peel back an onion layer at a time, over time though, not rushing towards I have to be vulnerable with this person so I can see who they truly are, and then decide. If you just take slow time to get to know someone, you always see who someone is. People are not that good at hiding. And it's all about the slower I go, the faster I see people. The faster I become clear of who's right with me, who's not right with me. And when I'm vulnerable with someone, do they go, "You get away from me," or do they go, "Wow, I want to love you more"? Because only people that can handle depth and handle vulnerability could handle a deep, meaningful relationship with you. And so when you're vulnerable with someone and they take it as a reason to love, care, and love you deeper and be more and hold you with more care and respect, then they go, "You get away from me, you're too much." Right? The people that go, "You get away from me, you're too much," are people that aren't able to handle a meaningful, deep relationship. It might just be more surface level friendships, or it might be relationships that we don't, or might be people that are part of our community that we don't really hang out with that much. And recognizing also, sometimes people have a pattern of they think that their darkness, like sometimes people are more psychically open. And what you recognize is that if you're seeing angels, angels are higher aspects of your consciousness. If you're seeing demons or dark entities, demons and dark entities are lower aspects of your consciousness. And so if you're seeing a demon and dark entity, right, and you have a tendency to fight darkness rather than welcome it, you suddenly start to think, "I'm being haunted by a demon or dark entity." And then that demon and dark entity, that is really a wounded inner child aspect of you, will actually start to mess with you because you're fighting it, which means you're giving all your power to unconscious fight, which is what that demon or dark entity represents. And the demon dark entity really just wants your attention. And so it will start to feel like you're being haunted. It will start to, like, I have a friend who, believes he's being haunted by demon and dark entities. And he the beings that he thinks are haunting him will wake him up in the middle of the night, and then he believes he needs to fight them or put them down as a way of trying to get back at them, but recognizing that's his wounded inner child trying to get his attention, and recognizing even if it's negative attention, right? Oftentimes we got more negative attention from our parents or the people that raised us than we did good attention. And so our inner child goes, familiar, and it's wearing a scary Halloween costume of a demon or dark entity because it gets your attention. And so recognizing there really is no such thing most of the time. Sometimes some of these truths are a little bit hard to talk about across the board, but most of the time and especially if we're someone that's embodying light, there really is no such thing as there really is. If we're someone that embodies our light and stands in light, there really is typically not something outside of you haunting you. There is wounded aspects of yourself that are wearing a scary Halloween costume, and they want your attention even if it's negative. And if you fight them, right, they go, attention, right? At least they're looking at me. And sometimes it might be the world's demon or dark entity haunting us. But again, any demon or dark entity just wants attention. And so if you give it loving attention, right, it starts to soften into the wounded inner child that it tries to pretend it's not. And we can do that same perspective with people. And that doesn't mean we spend time with people that mistreat us or abuse us, right? And if we have family that mistreats us, maybe we give them just more space, or if it's really extreme, we cut them out. But with friends and romantic partners, never need to stand for mistreatment or abuse. That's consistent, right? And or even that happens every now and then. Every now and then is still too much. Right? You can find people that love you that don't mistreat you. And if you haven't found people like that, you probably just haven't taken enough time to get to know enough people. Um, and are settling for someone that mistreats you and wasting all your time on that, thinking I can't find better. But have you cut that? If you cut that person out and actually work to find better, you would find those people. And so that's a truth. But recognizing anyone that acts really shitty, abusive, toxic is someone crying out for love, right? And if there's someone that it's only happened once, can I be more soft, gentle, and forgiving with them, and give them love rather than berate them, or try and fight them for how shitty they're showing up? And if it's something that's happened regular, or they do something really awful, we're all going to have to use our own discernment of how to relate to that person. But typically, if it's a relationship that has meaning and value into us, and they're 97% of the time really awesome, um, it's something to, can I show this person love because they're just acting out for how they don't feel loved right now, right? Everyone is a crying child when they're their most evil selves, or they're their most shitty selves, and that doesn't mean we tolerate that. But it does mean, it does give us compassion for either when we set boundaries with people, or when we, maybe it's just a little small rupture and we orient towards repair. And for me in my life and the people I surround myself with, most of the time I'm oriented towards repair. And there's very few circumstances where there is some circumstances, but it's not as often as people think, where we need to set a hard boundary with people. And so recognizing, okay, to bring it back, when we share our darkness with people, when we share our insecurities with people, one will stop feeling so insecure in that person's presence, right? Especially if we're feeling insecure with a romantic partner. If we tell them our insecurities, right, they then have a choice to love us deeper or reject us. If they reject us, great. Now I know I was investing in a relationship that never would have went deeper, as deep as I wanted. If they lean deeper in, great. I know I invested my time in someone who actually is able to meet me on a deeper level. And as we share our insecurities, we start to feel a hell of a lot insecure, and we start to feel way more secure and safe, right, around people, because we now can be vocal about when an insecurity is coming up, or when we are having a bad day, rather than trying to stuff it down and then getting triggered be, because we're relating to another person, and there's something we're hiding from, and the universe just played out, just was that other person triggering us to make us aware of the thing we're hiding from, because avoidance is always avoidance of the divine feminine, of settledness, safety, security. And really, when we avoid something or in denial of something, we're aligning ourselves with unconsciousness. And the reason why unconsciousness and the void are both black is because unconsciousness is constantly chasing pain, but really all it wants is love. And when you can show, welcome, embrace, and love your unconsciousness, is when that black pain dissolves back into the void of spaciousness, emptiness, safety, settledness, security. And realizing that any type of wound, any type of shame, guilt, unworthiness, any type of negative belief we have about ourselves is actually a mask under security and a mask over security and wholeness. And if we work to face that pain, we actually start to see, oh, I was only insecure because I was avoiding this insecurity. Oh, I was only insecure because I was avoiding these negative beliefs that make me insecure about myself. Oh, I only didn't always feel the most grounded or settled because there was an aspect of me that was trying to run from parts of myself. And when I learned to face those parts, I start to become way more embodied, and I start to feel way more spaciousness and openness in my body for how safe I am with all aspects of myself, no matter where they are at on their healing journey. Because what you realize is, when I was hurt or harmed, is when we hold on to that pain, that aspect of ourselves stops growing. And we then have like an inner 12-year-old, an inner 6-year-old, an inner 11-year-old for how we were hurt at those ages. And the only way to help those ages grow up into the mature adult we are is to love and care for them like the parents or like the people that raised us never did. And so what you recognize is my wounds, my demons, my dark entities, my shadow is only as large as how I run and deny those aspects of myself. And the more I love, care, hold, and welcome it, welcome the darkness, doesn't mean I act from a place of darkness, but I can face my own internal darkness, and I can be more soft and gentle on myself even when I do feed an addiction, then beat myself and be hard on myself. I'm aligning myself more with the divine feminine energy, and I'm healing my avoidance of the void and aligning myself more of the void of the divine feminine that can hold, welcome, and embrace any wound, no matter how dark or wounded it is. And the more I embrace something, the more I talk to myself as if a loving parent loving a crying child, the more those childs start to have the courage and strength to choose differently, to think differently, and to start to grow up into the adult I want to become. Right? You can almost think of we almost have like plants within us that aren't fully grown, and when we love ourselves and when we work to choose from a place of well-being and value rather than toxicity or mistreating our body, or trying to avoid our pain through substances that make us numb and checked out, or even using people in that same way. When we can start to face our pain is when those trees and plants that had stunted growth just start to grow up into the beautiful embodied tree that is able to be really rooted and grounded in our body and also reach really high up spiritually. And recognizing, even like in the last video, I talked about harmonizing yourself. Actually, the last two, I've talked about harmonizing yourself to the void. And really I don't think I'm going to do a meditation this video, but I'll just talk about it. If you're curious, you can also go watch the last two videos and they'll talk about it. They'll do a little meditation around it. But the void is a pure black space, and it's the darkest night you've ever seen. And it's also completely still. There's no particles, there's no atoms. And if you just imagined your body dissolving into pure black nothing space, darkest night ever, completely still, and felt that feeling in your body as you do it. And if you lose your focus, you just bring yourself back to dissolving yourself into the void, to focusing on the void, to feeling the void in your body. It actually will help heal some of your avoidance and denial of aspects of yourself, because you're aligning yourself with divine feminine energy. And you realize that life is all about alignment. And the more I align myself with love, care, the divine feminine, or align myself in the void space, the easier time I have through any addiction, the easier time I have in being intentional about what I create, or knowing if this is in alignment with me or not in line with me, because you can only know something when you recognize you know nothing. Really, truly. You can know some things too just by learning about them, but deep embodied wisdom comes from I know literally nothing. And that's actually aligning yourself in the divine feminine space that holds everything. And so recognizing that if I need help in the direction I'm moving, when I align myself in the void, and I can even ask it questions, I'll start to receive answers of what direction is actually going to be aligned in, because space aligned for me to move in, because space actually holds everything, and it actually knows what you desire, and it knows where you want to go, and it will give you perfect guidance. and and that might take some practice to build up what the voice of the void feels like, answering questions. And it's something I definitely am something I'm going to start to try and do more. I wouldn't say I do it perfectly now, but it's something to be aware of. Is we always have access to information, and the more we align ourselves with the void, the less we'll struggle with unconsciousness, the less we'll struggle with addiction, the less We'll struggle seeing people clearly and giving our full self to someone who couldn't handle it well, right? And the slower you move, the more aligned you are in stillness to actually know who's right for you and who's not right for you. And thinking about dating a little bit, there is a I think dating, oftentimes the people that think that, oh, I can only heal in relationships, right? That's a perspective built off codependency. I'm just going to tell it how it is. And also recognizing that, while if you rushed into a relationship, while the start of that relationship there might be a lot of healing, you eventually get to a place where you're either taking steps forward and that person isn't, or you're starting to have to kind of like drag that person behind you, because you found that relationship not from a place of wholeness but from a place of codependency, from a place of I need something from this person, and that's why I started this relationship, rather than I'm so aligned in I have worth and I have value, and that my soulmate lives within my heart, and I'm devoted to healing the soulmate. I'm devoted to healing my codependency, so that way I could actually welcome more deep, meaningful relationships. And the most efficient way to do that is to be alone. And it doesn't mean we don't have friends, and it doesn't mean we don't get to know people, but recognizing I actually don't need to date people in order to heal. Actually, when we're aligned ourselves in slowness of aloneness, we actually get to know ourselves a lot deeper, a lot more quickly, when we have less distractions in our life. And we start and people that think you can only heal in relationships, it's like a race of the rabbit and the tortoise, and the rabbit rushes off towards experiences and it meets someone, right? But that person probably leads that, will most likely, most of the time, it's a little bit hard to talk across the board, but for most situations, that person will either lead that rabbit down the wrong direction, because that rabbit will try and give away its what it values and is passionate to try and keep that relationship together, or maybe that person ends up breaking that rabbit's heart, and then the rabbit, and that's almost like the rabbit breaking its leg. And the tortoise, slow and steady, right, didn't rush towards experiences, but just slowly got to know itself deeper and slowly took steps forward, actually is the one that wins the race every time. And while there might be more growth at the beginning of a relationship, there's really no way to start a romantic relationship and avoid the heartbreak on the other side of it. And you're only going to really start relationships that are going to last long term when you let go of your need of a relationship, and are so settled in yourself that you actually find what your greatest passion is. And when you find your greatest passion, you find your greatest mission on this planet. And then you only are willing to give yourself to someone else when their mission matches your mission. And then that's when we can talk about union of soulmates, of two missions come together as one, and they amplify both each other's missions. And while you can be in relationship and still grow towards wholeness, it's just a little bit of a slower process, because usually that person ends up being a little bit more of a distraction than they do typically amplifying. And while there might be a lot of growth at the beginning of the relationship, there's no way to get out of that relationship without someone pulling out a piece of your heart, typically if you truly did love them. And recognizing I can only really settle with another when I fully settled in myself, and that's actually letting go of my desire for a romantic partnership and building community. This is at least Luke's perspective. And so far it hasn't been proven wrong. I'm still waiting for someone to give me an example of how it could be wrong, and I'm gonna recognize that I don't know everything. I really don't. But this is how I see life right now. And also recognizing that, okay, let's say we're aligning ourselves in I want to know the soulmate within my heart, and I'm not going to settle or compromise for anything less than their mission matches mine. They're just amazing at whatever their craft is. That is my craft, and it will amplify our missions by coming together. and we've both found wholeness in ourselves. And I don't know if I've found wholeness in myself, and I've been alone for quite a long time. And so recognizing that, and you know, I also want to say there probably is exceptions to this, but majority of the time, right, we would be better off not searching for a romantic partner and finding and working, building deep, meaningful community relationships. And if you do that and truly let your desire for a partnership to die, is when you start to see people clearly, you start to see why it wouldn't work. And it's actually the perspective that would allow it to work eventually with the right person, right? But it's being so detached to from I need a romantic relationship to becoming so detached in yourself that when that romantic relationship comes, you actually don't feel like you need it, and you don't have to cling or grasp onto it, and it doesn't and it's not hard to fall in love, but it's rather easy because you're only falling in love, you're merely falling in love with how this person amplifies you, right? And you have such strong worth and value that if that person stops amplifying you, or one person starts growing way faster than the other, you guys both feel okay letting each other go, because it's not, oh, I need this person because this person defines my worth and value, but it's like this person just amplifies me in a beautiful way, and so I spend more time with them than other people. And right, you could do that with friends too. But okay, recognizing that sometimes shame and guilt is showing when we're out of alignment with truth. And like for me, and for anyone that truly is aligned in a soulmate relationship with themselves, becoming their own soulmate, which is really like the true definition, I would say, of greatness. Oh gosh. Um, but um your soul, when you, if you, let's say you're aligned in a soulmate relationship, if you went and had a casual hookup with someone while you were saying, no, I'm aligned in truth, I'm aligned in getting to know my soulmate, and then one moment someone hot hits on you and you just let that all go and casually hook up with that person, you would feel really shameful and guilty afterwards. And that shame and guilt is actually telling you, hey, you were aligned in truth and you just stepped out of that for a moment to try and feed some lower desire that actually was more about you feeding desires than it was about generally holding, caring, and loving for this person that was interested in getting to know you, right? And a lot of people out there still feed lower desires, and we have to be the ones of, I'm devoted to only feeding love and connection with this person, right? And if it truly is, it doesn't mean I can't have sex, but saving it for, okay, my, like a long-term relationship, like my soulmate relationship, right, is as actually what's going to feed meaningful relationships in your life, because then you're no longer trying to use people to meet your desires, but you're actually just so interested in getting to know people, to hold people, to care for people. And that doesn't mean you can't cuddle with someone or dance sensually with someone at ecstatic dance or Latin dance. You can do all of that, but keeping it in the boundary of, right, if this person doesn't feel right for me fully and doesn't feel like their mission is matching my mission, I'm keeping it in friendship so they're not a distraction for the mission I have at hand. Oh gosh. And also, like the same thing would be like, let's say you believe in being sober, or and you then go go on a night where you go out drinking, you might feel shameful and guilty afterwards because you took a moment aligning yourself in something other than the truth that you were embodying, which is whatever you value. If you value sobriety and you make a choice and act on different than that sobriety, you might feel shameful and guilty afterwards. And it's just the universe saying, hey, you were out of alignment with truth for that choice. And sometimes shame and guilt is going to come up on how people shamed us or made us guilty in the past. And so it takes a little discernment to figure out which is which. But typically, anytime I'm feeding something that's lower and more unconscious, right? I might feel shameful and guilty afterwards because it was really me using my body to feed a desire that wasn't serving my body. And sometimes the ways that I was expressive in the past, or maybe I'm gay and my parents made me feel shameful about being gay, then when I express more of my gayness, I might feel more shameful and guilty, but that's actually just because I'm expressing something that was wounded by how people denied my expression when I was younger. So that's, something to be aware of. And when we're thinking about shame and guilt, and we're thinking about unworthiness, right? It's always when we are willing to turn it into art, when we're willing to take our shame, guilt, and unworthiness and say, this is going to be my next journal entry. This is going to be the next poem I write. This is going to be, I'm going to make a comic book strip up, or I'm going to make a drawing that expresses this deep shame and guilt I feel around this incident in my past, or unworthiness I feel about the incident in my past, is when we're literally, right, negative beliefs always don't want you to see them, because when you can see them, you see them, and it's almost like seeing the roots, and you can dig the roots out through your creative expression. And so whatever pain you have, whatever wounds you have, you will dissolve that pain back into the void by consistently expressing that pain, whether that's talking to your partner about the insecurities you have, or talking about your friendships, talking to your friendships that you really value, about how you're afraid they're going to abandon you and deny you, like how friends did in the past for you, or whether that's just you taking a moment to see your pain and turning it into a beautiful piece of art, even if that's just finding songs on Spotify and singing along to a song that kind of touches the pain that was an experience you had in your past. That all honors pain, and when you honor something, it dissolves back into the void, because you're no longer avoiding it, but you're facing it. And when you face something, it becomes nothing again. It becomes wholeness, it becomes spaciousness, it becomes peace and harmony, because the only way to really find harmony in ourselves is to face the aspects of ourselves that was harmed. And once we face them, using it as fuel, the masculine uses it as fuel to create beautiful art, because intention is divine feminine is intention and stillness, which is facing, welcoming, embracing, and then the masculine is the expression, and you need both in order to heal. And so where's the wounds of your past that really hurt and harmed you, and can you use it as fuel to create your next art piece? And can you use it as fuel to be more vulnerable, rather than continuing to hide from that pain, and recognizing vulnerability is our greatest strength? Vulnerability is what determines who's really an adult and who's still hiding as an inner child in an adult body. And when people are willing to be vulnerable is when it's like almost like taking all of your clothes off in front of a person, and you really start to see who people are. And people that people that love you will find that hot rather than gross, no matter what your body looks like. So I hope that helps. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Bye.